NBA Draft had its share of winners and losers. The NBA Draft was an exciting night, filled with surprises after the first 3 picks. There was no early, yet there are so many prospects now, players who could make impacts, from 23-year-old seniors to one-and-dones to those who chose to skip college and just work out for a season. That the draft is unpredictable. But it's an opportunity. There will be winners and losers, and while it's anything near an exact science to predict those who will thrive and falter after this draft, well, give it our best shot. Pelicans. A few months ago, questions as to whether the NBA could survive in New Orleans persisted. Anthony Davis. Hawks. They decided to tear things up a few years ago after failing to reach the elite teams in the Eastern Conference, and so far, their rebuild couldn't be going better. Not only are the Celtics. It was a tough week in Boston, and the Celtics needed to do something to make themselves feel good. With 3 first-round Heat, they are so far over the salary cap that they have to score big in the draft to improve. They were able to get Timberwolves. They traded up to 6th to get Texas Tech swingman Jarrett Culver, and then took Pac-12 Player of the Year Jalen Noel from Washington. Culver could turn in. Spurs. They never go in a conventional draft direction, and again they took Croatian power forward Luka Šimanić, the ability to be a stretch 4 under the tutelage of Greg Popovich. San Antonio Knicks. They failed in their quest to get Williamson when they lost out on the draft lottery and landed the 3rd overall pick. But they used the pick. Suns. They made that draft night trade with the Celtics, seizing the opportunity to take Virginia guard Ty Jerome, but they also took Cameron Johnson, who will be 23 when the season begins, 11th overall after their pick swap with the Timberwolves. The Suns could have taken Magic. Orlando had just 1 pick and selected Auburn forward Chuma Okeke, who could miss most of the season with a torn ACL suffered in Auburn's run in the NCAA tournament. Okeke could end up. Lakers. They traded so much to the Pelicans for Davis. They needed to fill their roster with prospects who come cheap. Instead, the Cavaliers. They were able to maneuver 3 first-round picks and used them on 2 players who could play point guard to join the point guard they took in the lottery last season. Cleveland. Definitely. Canada becoming rich in prospects. 6 players with Canadian roots were drafted Thursday night, including 3rd overall pick RJ Barrett and 17th pick Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the cousin of Clippers point guard and fellow Canadian Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's a testament to how much talent has been generated north of the border in this generation, sparked by the Toronto Raptors and the popularization of the NBA in Canada. 4 of those drafts, and the Canadian national team, which could be loaded this season if even half of its NBA players participate, is vying for its first Olympic berth since 2000. Barrett is the son of "It's amazing to be Canadian," said Barrett, taken 3rd overall by the Knicks. "We take a lot of pride. That's why I've got Canadian basketball is really on the rise. You see, we have Alexander Walker is a Toronto native who transferred to high school in St. Louis and then Alexander Walker said, having the Raptors in his home country has inspired many young Canadian kids to embrace basketball. It's given it a chance, opportunity," he said. "I feel like it's." As for Brandon Clarke, taken 21st overall and headed to the Grizzlies, he was born in Vancouver and moved to Phoenix when he was 4 years old. "Yeah, I just feel like there's lots of talents coming out of there now," Clarke said. "I am not sure why it took so long, but I would just say probably because basketball is getting bigger and bigger, and it's gotten much bigger, too, in Canada. And also with the Nash is essentially the Canadian basketball forefather, and his influence on the national team and many younger players has become evident. He was also close. I am a huge fan of every player that comes out of the country of Canada," Clarke said. "To see players, I am somebody who grew up watching Nash play, and I always thought it was really cool he was from Canada because I am, too." RJ Barrett. Clarke will be joining fellow rookie G.A. Morant and second-year forward Jaren Jackson Jr. on the Grizzlies. "Yeah, I've watched them both plenty, and I think it'll be very fun playing with them both," Clarke said. GA is clear. Florida State center Mfionda Kabengele is from Burlington, Ontario, and transferred to high school in Indiana before committing to the Seminoles. He was the 20s. It's been growing steadily with the Pioneers and Steve Nash. We have Andrew Wiggins. I feel like other Canadian kids like myself are inspired. We took our training, that's why I feel the Canadian game has been growing, just because of the overall growth and just constant competition, especially in the United States. I feel like in the Boston College guard Kentucky Bowman went undrafted Thursday but finds himself with an interesting decision. He can either go up. Gary Washburn can be reached at. Follow him on Twitter. Related slideshow top picks in the NBA draft provided by Iman.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.